Hello, how you all doing? Welcome to the chat. We are so excited that you are here with us at the chat this Sunday evening. And last week was the bomb. We had our brothers up on here and they were sharing about being a father. Yes, being a father. And we're going to be talking more about that this evening. And I'm actually going to change over and allow, not allow, but my husband is phenomenal. And I think it'd be powerful to just have the men on here chatting. And asking each other questions or sharing, not just about being a father, but also being a man, also things that we women and other men may want to know. All righty. So we're going to bring them on in. And so we're going to introduce them. Okay, let me. Hey, Bishop.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
How you doing? And then we have back with us Minister Thomas, have Brother Brandon, we have Pastor Michael, two new people with us this evening. We have Pastor Rick, and we have our own deacon brother Alan up in the house. And so we're so excited that you all are with us this evening. And so I am turn the goes over to Bishop, uh, and you all can go into more details about who you are and give a little background about yourselves. All righty. So Bishop is all yours
All
for
righty.
an hour.
All righty. Well, good evening, everyone. And thanks, Apostle Jeanette, for gathering us together to talk as men and to give a peek into what it is that's on our minds that we would love for others to actually know about as Christian men, as men of color, and men of different ages and stages. So what I am going to do over the course of the next few minutes is engage this group of illustrious brothers in a conversation that not only looks at the kinds of things we were discussing last week in terms of balance and prioritization as husbands and fathers and community leaders and servant leaders. But if time permits, also have the opportunity to find out what's on your minds in regards to the issues that Christian men face. There is an interesting book that I came across that was written by Patrick Morley. And the title of the book is The Christian Man, a conversation about the 10 issues men say matter most. So if we have time, we may tee that up. But first, let's tee everyone up by way of introduction. So just take a quick 30 seconds or so and introduce yourselves. We can see your names on the screen, but let us know what you want us to know. We'll start over there in Western New York. Minister Thomas, what's up?
Praise the Lord, everybody. Hey fellas. My name is Minister Thomas. I serve as the Minister of Music at Greater Faith Bible Tabernacle, as well as the Youth and Young Adult President of the church. And I also serve as the Minister of Music for the New York, Pennsylvania, New England State Council of the Pentecostal Churches of the Apostolic Faith as well. And I am so excited to be here again. They invited us back on Pastor Brooks. So I'm excited to be here one more time. And thank you to Bishop Vaughn and Apostle Vaughn for this wonderful opportunity. I'm excited about this dialogue.
Awesome. So we'll keep on going. I'm looking kind of like Hollywood Squares. So we'll keep the tic-tac-toe going. Brother Brandon Diggs, what's up?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brandon Diggs. I am a IT professional in my corporate life. I am an AV ministry manager in my ministry life, and I'm very much grateful to be back and to share my perspective on things, and I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Cool. All righty, we'll go on down and Brady Bunch style over there in the lower right, Pastor Brooks.
Hello, my name is again Pastor Michael Brooks. I'm here in Clarksville, Tennessee. My wife and I have a ministry here. I do work on a military installation. Also working right now in the finance field with my brother. Married 25 years, 3 children, 3 grandchildren. Fully blessed.
Amen. All righty, back over to the center, Pastor Ricardo.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pastor Ricardo Rowe. I am a engineering manager in my, as Brandon said, corporate life, and in ministry, I've been an associate pastor at Faith to Faith Ministries under Bishop Dr. Mark Vaughn for the last several years. And before that, a licensed minister for another 10 years.
Thank you. And last but not least, Buffalo's own, by way of Columbus, by way of Tennessee, by way of the world, Alan Brooks. How you doing, man?
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you, Bishop, for that great introduction. My name is Alan Brooks, born in Buffalo, New York. I have actually been married 35 years. I have a son and a daughter. They're both in their 30s. I have 2 grandchildren. One will be, well, she just turned 9, and the other's 9 months, soon to be 10. I'm a retired former associate of Honda of American Manufacturing. Now I full-time run my own business in financial advising and helping families protect and grow for their financial future. I'm excited to be on the panel to hear what these other gentlemen have to say, see what I can learn and what I can share.
Thank you. Well, it really is great to have the opportunity to spend some time together. So often in society, when you see a panel of men, especially Black men, it's either a rallying cry or it's something where there's an uprising, and we need to see more images like this. It's interesting to think about how people actually introduce themselves when they are allowed to do it in an unscripted manner. As I was listening, there were some who focused on ministry, there were some who focused on family, there were some who focused on career, and it really is appropriate for us to think about how it is that we show up. And the way that we show up actually can often inform how it is that we go about what we go about. So I was doing the math because I've had the opportunity to spend some time with each of you, even Minister Thomas last week. And so, including myself, there are 17 kids that are represented on this panel. And if I did the math right, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 grandkids. Now, of those 17 kids, 5 of them are mine. So we've got about a third of the children. So some of you have some catching up to do. But
That's over with.
we'll leave that for another conversation. But let's start out this way. So you introduced yourselves and you shared what is top of mind for you in that regard. What I want to do is build on that introduction that Apostle gave us. When you think about what you wish the world would view you as, we'll drill it down to women in a minute, but when you show up in the world, what is it that you really hope that the world is seeing? Who wants to jump into that one?
So I guess I can start.
Okay.
I really hope that the world will take the time to see me and not the preconceived notions of who I should be, not what they're used to seeing people that look like me do and say and act in TV, radio, internet, etc. So what I would say is let people see me.
Thank you. I think I saw you. Yes, Alan.
Yeah, well, first of all, I would hope that they would see a man, okay, and understand that I'm a man that can be a father, um, a provider, a leader, and that people love me and I love them and respect me. If I can just get that, that's a good enough start. They see, if they look, take time to look, they'll see what God has done for me, and they'll see Him through me. And usually that comes through in my smile. So generally, that's what I show them first is that smile, and then I move on from there. But I can't control their perception. I just can only be who I am.
Very cool. One more person. What do you want people to see?
I would say you said it correctly. First of all, an individual, somebody's son, a father, a husband, and then be open to a conversation. I think that's where we learn so much about people. I always think back to Brown versus Board of Education when they started migrating. And when they started busting us from the east side over to South Buffalo, man, at first it was scary. Uh, but as the weeks opened up, as we started talking to people of different colors and different cultures, we had a lot of questions. And when we were able to ask them, we were able to actually get the answer and not go by what we were perceived as or what you heard on the news. So when you are able to sit down and talk to each other as individuals, human beings, then we can learn about each other. And then you can draw a conclusion based on the person's character, not their appearance.
Great. All right. So now, the obvious follow-up to that, which we won't actually drill down further with, is what are you able to do to help people see that guy? You said how you want to be seen. How can you help influence that? But like I said, we'll throw that out into the airwaves, and then maybe if we can circle back to it, we'll see. But let's drill it down to, again, one of the things that Apostle was saying about men and women. So I'm going to do something a little bit cheeky, I guess. I know that we have maybe a dividing line on this panel, including myself. We've got 3 folks who are over 50, and we've got 3 who are under 50. I'm assuming that you're under 50, Minister Thomas. You look kind of young, but I don't know. You might be one of those that ages real well. But have you reached 50 yet?
Not yet, but Lord willing, someday we will.
So I'm gonna ask the younger guys. I wanna ask the younger guys first. What would you say, in your experience, has been the biggest misconception that women have about men? You can answer that in the context of all women about all men. You can answer that in the context of your experience as a Black man. You can answer that in the context of your experience as a Christian man. So however you want to. So I am specifically tossing this out to Brandon, Minister Thomas, and Pastor Rick. And then I'm going to put the older guys on the spot. So listen carefully as these guys are sharing. All righty. So since you're unmuted, go ahead, Minister Thomas. What's the biggest misconception that you've experienced?
One of the biggest misconceptions that I have experienced is, that's a good question. I think possibly one of the biggest misconceptions may be that, and I know we've all come to understand this, that all of us, we have the ability to be in the house but not be present. And I think one of the greatest misconceptions about fatherhood is that our focal point in fathering is just protector and provider. But the greatest misconception that I believe that may be something that has been believed upon by women is that that fathers, that although they are present, may be absent as it relates to how they nurture and how they protect and how they care for their children and their household. So that's one of the misconceptions that I believe that may be a thought.
Interesting. And so what that sets up potentially is when you are a nurturing dad, it is sometimes not received well, with the genuineness that it is offered. It's like, okay, what's wrong with you? Your job isn't to be that nurturer. So when you are there, folks look at you kind of funny on both sides, perhaps. But let's hear from another Brother Brandon or Pastor Rick.
So I think one for me, the biggest one for me is similar to the one that you actually mentioned last week, was in regards to the predetermined role.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one thing that I've definitely experienced as a husband, as a father, it's like whenever, so I have a about to be 4-year-old son. Whenever he needs something or something needs to be taken care of for him, there's no hesitation in me doing it. I don't expect someone else to do it. I don't expect my wife to stop what she's doing to make something happen for him. I expect myself to make that happen, whether it was back changing his diaper or whether it's right now to fixing him lunch, whatever he needs, picking him up from school, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to make sure that it happens, and I'm the one responsible for making that happen. Same deal when it comes to the marriage side. It's like for many bad reasons, there's assumptions that, it has to be the wife that's in the kitchen cooking, for example. So I can think back to plenty of times where because I know my wife has a long commute, or because I know that she's getting home late, I've already taken care of dinner. I've taken care of everything so that when she gets home, that's not an additional burden that she has. So I think those are probably the misconceptions, is just these predefined roles. Nothing is truly predefined. It's what needs to be done.
Thank you. All right, Pastor Rick, you're the older of the youngsters, so what you got?
I'm just happy to be grouped in with the youngsters. So I think for me, it kind of tees up on some of what's been said about predefined roles, but it kind of goes more into predefined ways of thinking. There's a very popular, sometimes spoken, sometimes not spoken understanding that, men don't have feelings or aren't sensitive or can't be sensitive or things of that nature. I think it's a very old world mentality, and I think it's changing a lot. And I think that anytime you have that mindset, you're limiting yourself and you're limiting your relationship with that man. To think that he isn't capable of emotions or isn't capable of feeling or isn't capable of being hurt or any of those things. So society teaches men to hold things in, and it teaches women to let things out of that, in that nature. So you'll hear a lot about women talking about their feelings, talking about their emotions. And because we're not societally encouraged to be talking about it a lot, the mindset goes that they don't exist, that we just don't have them. And that, I think, is one of the things that is a very interesting, wish people would realize to me.
Thank you. All righty, so now I'm going to switch gears to the older guys, and not going to ask you if you can relate to what the younger guys were saying. I just want to hear from you, since you've had a little bit more life experience. How have you dealt with misconceptions about your role, about your manhood, about your fatherhood, about your being a Christian, about your being a community man, however it has arisen. How have you dealt with misconceptions as you have grown into who you are today?
Look, I guess I'll go. Well, Mark, as far as my life experience, I have I learned that people have misperceptions due to ignorance. Okay. So one thing I've done to try to eliminate that or to make myself available is to smile. Okay. Because when I smile, I can erase half of the stereotypes. Because there's so many perceptions that the angry black man, the mean black man, all these things. When I worked in the corporate world, I'd have people get in my face and do things, women, and pointing their fingers, which I know that's something they would never dream of outside of that plant. But I knew that if I was to show any anger, it would be amplified as they would say it was rage. So I had to learn how to control my emotions, and then my relationship with Christ helped me actually control the anger from the misperceptions so that I could not react, but I could respond. So I've learned to respond to life situations and scenarios rather than react. When I was younger, I was more inclined to react. But I had to learn that obviously if I would react, I would feed into the stereotype and they would never see who I really am. So that's how I have dealt with just people in general, because I love tearing down stereotypes. Because I'm not the average person. They've never met me before. They've never met anyone like me before. And I just try to give them the opportunity to meet me by being available, and that usually helps when I smile. And that's my experience dealing with people, because I will not allow other people's issues to become mine.
Wow. Can you pile on to that, Pastor Brooks?
Yes, I can.
No, I think I've said enough.
I think exposure is very important too. Being exposed to certain things helps you to really draw conclusions with certain people or things. Perfect example. When I was younger, I remember getting a video game. And when I got this video game for the kids, they got me hooked. I found myself spending so much time with the video game, I was lacking in doing the things that I used to do. You know, helping the wife out around the house. That I definitely do with Brother Brandon. Dishes are dishes. They got to be done. You just do it. You know, it didn't matter. You know, wasn't a wife's job to do. Because overall, we were still to take care of everything. In my opinion, that's what I was exposed to. But the video game was a distraction. One night when my brother got in town, and we started at about 3 in the afternoon. But we know, man, it was like 2:30 in the morning. Everybody went to bed, and we were still playing the video game. And I said, oh my God. What? And I laugh now because I work on the military installation, and I see young guys, they just get caught up in the game. I mean, they be walking outside butt naked. They didn't know that they be walked out the front door. I mean, just things of that nature where you get distracted, you miss. But when you see that a lot, then that becomes a perception of what people do and not do. Now, it was just that young man that wasn't paying attention, but it doesn't mean we all get treated the same way. So again, it's always doing an individual thing. And we learn even in the word, you don't judge a book by its cover. I mean, you don't, you know. And my brother said it. I've always been smiling. I always said, why you got the Kool-Aid smile? I was a happy kid, you know. I mean, you know, I had a roof over my head. I had some of the things I wanted, had everything I needed. And I think back as a kid, I mean, the society was just as bad as far as race, but I didn't get to experience a lot of it. I wasn't exposed to a lot of it. But as I got older, you know, when Dad took us to different neighborhoods and we got exposed to why certain people had bigger and nicer things, we was like, oh, we thought we had bigger and nicer things. So it's always, I think, a key of being exposed to certain things. What we have to do is continue to expose our children to things so they know there's no limits. If they work hard, if they educate themselves, they make the right calls and the right choices. Again, do not rely on your emotions. But you're right. Some of the things that we've repressed, if we don't deal with those things, all you need is the wrong person to pull the trigger. And all you got to do is say one thing or do one thing. And for us, it's not 3 strikes you're out. It's like, hey, you just out. So when we know that, we have to, God has to do it. Without that, I mean, it's just, we're not really in control. So we have to trust Him. We have to be the examples for Him. So my desire is that people see Christ before they see me. Since we know our spirits before we even open our mouths. You know, my spirit will meet the spirit, and I'll know already if the person got issues. So I can choose to trust them with love and kindness. Because love and kindness is how you draw. Or do I just want to walk in love? So I think that maturity comes along with that, and people experience to deal with different situations. Nurturing, we do it.
Cool. So thank you all for sharing that. I'm going to kind of wrap up this round by sharing a few observations of my own. And then I'm also going to ask one more question and let the folks who are on with us know that we are going to take a few minutes before we hand it back over to Apostle to see what questions you have. We have a whole bunch of sisters on the line on Facebook, on Periscope, on YouTube. So we want to hear from you. So we are monitoring your comments and questions. So hit us up. We want to be able to address what is top of mind for you. So I'm going to bridge the span from young to old. When I was younger, by God's grace, I came to salvation when I was 11. And then when I was 17, it became my own. I've told the story that when I was 11, I kind of got tricked into getting saved because my sister had gone to the altar in our church. You know, they gave the appeal if you wanted to come for whatever. And our pastor would ask you, why have you come? And my sister, she just wanted to go. So my mother had me take her up. And when they put the mic in her mouth and said, why have you come? She said, because my mommy made me. So God bless her, my grandmother was on the first or second row. She snatched my sister so quickly, I didn't know what had happened. But the truth of the matter was I was up there because my mother had told me to go. But I was not going to be snatched by my grandmother in front of the whole church. And so I said, I've come to be saved. And so since I made that commitment, I decided I was going to go through the rudiments of it. But by the time I got to be 17, senior in high school, it really became personal for me. And I can tell you that one of the biggest misconceptions that irritated me for years from women in the church, women who were in most cases married women with children. So these were men a lot older than me. They were like, okay, you don't seem to be chasing after the girls like we see so many other young men doing. Is there something going on? Do you like girls, don't you? And so I was like, okay, what's up with that? And then someone asked the same question about my younger brother. And so listen, Between the two of us, my brother and I have over 60 years of marriage, 10 children between the two of us. Trust me, we like girls. We just had enough sense to find the right one, and so it wasn't about, it was surprising to me that women expected you, they gave that message that they expected you to be kind of chasing skirts in the church. It bothered me that was the expectation of women, because when you have that subtle, unspoken sense, then it can encourage that mentality. And then what happens? You wind up with women growing up in the church, getting their hearts broken, having their beauty taken for granted, their innocence robbed, and then men become these pariahs in ministry. All of us are not like that. And so I believe that women and men have to actually encourage those guys who are trying to actually live right in their youth. So fast forward, I'm good and grown, and now I'm a pastor. So the big stereotype, again, very irritating, because you see it in entertainment and people have it in their minds in the culture. And that is that if you are a minister, if you are a pastor, you are in it for the money. You are in it because, okay, you want the big car, you want the fancy house, you want the big bank account. You couldn't do it in your secular career, but you can come into organized religion and just kind of dupe people out of their money. And so when people would hint at that, I would try, Minister Thomas, I would try to behave, but I would be like, listen, by the special grace of God, I have 4 college degrees, including a PhD, okay? And at the time and even now, I do not take a salary from the church. Hello, somebody. God gave me the ability to take care of my family and be able to take care of his people. Do you hear what I'm saying? And so that would aggravate me when people in the church and out of the church seem to think that you were somehow more interested in kind of the gains that you could get as a minister versus the service that you provide. So anyway, so that's young, that's older. And what I did with the young, by the way, is I had adopted the same mindset as Brother Allen over there. He said that people often have misperceptions out of ignorance. And so I was like, you just ignorant. By the time you get done asking about, do I like women, I'm walking down the aisle with my good thing. And here we are 34 years later. And some of y'all still haven't landed in a relationship that is fulfilling and lasting. So as they say sometimes, how you like me now? Hallelujah. All righty. So I'm going to behave. Let me ask you one more question, then we're going to go to see what's on the minds of the folks, because I see some comments coming in. We said about misperception, so I want you guys to have the daunting task of representing all brothers. Hallelujah. I know that you hated it in school. You were the voice of the Black person. You were the voice of the Black man. Well, I need you to be the voice of the Black man, so I need you to represent. Can you tell me one thing that you really wish the world knew about Black men? And again, the world could be the church world and men and women in the church. It could be the world at large. What is the one thing that you really want folks to know about Black Christian men? Brandon is ready. Come on with it.
I was ready, because just the climate that we find our society and our nation in right now, I can't help but think of the fact that I feel like there is not necessarily a majority, but there is a large number of people in this nation that for some reason think that we are a threat. And it seems like there's no matter of talking, no matter of Facebook posts, no matter of complaining on the internet that's going to change the fact that for some reason, just because of the way we look, we are a threat. And that is that is the top thing that annoys me to no end, because you can look at other individuals going about their day, their routine, doing whatever it is they felt like doing, yet I have to go outside and I have to think above and beyond what I should even have to think about. I shouldn't have to think about whether or not I'll make it back from the gas station. Shouldn't have to think about, I have to keep, an eye on my son wandering around in his own yard. Like, I feel like there are certain things that there shouldn't need to happen, but they do need to happen because there is a large segment of society that feels that we are a threat. So that is top of mind for me. I can't emphasize enough how much that bothers me, because I can't emphasize enough how untrue that is. You will find the most hardworking, the most determined, the most driven, the most excellent individuals in our own community, but people don't want to see that.
Wow. So your message to the world is not all Black men are a threat. Amen. All righty, let's see. All right, Pastor Rick, I see you and unmuted.
So, piggybacking off of that a little bit, and one thing that has annoyed me a lot, and you hear it every once in a while, you've been hearing it a bit as people have been going back and forth, like Brandon has said, in the climate that we're in right now, and that's this whole notion of go back to Africa. It really bothers me on a deep level, because if you look at the history of this nation, we've been there since the beginning. We've been contributing since the beginning. So we're not second-class citizens. This is our country as much as anybody else. And in fact, more than some. We've been here from the beginning, contributing, building this nation for what it is. So the idea that all of a sudden, because there are race tensions and this, that, and the third thing, that people start saying, why don't you go back to Africa? I wish somebody would give me that ignorant response. You know what I mean? Because, like I said, we've been here. And we can go down the history books of all the things that we have accomplished in this nation, even under the bonds of slavery, even in the midst of being second-class citizens in our own nation, even in the midst of all these other things that have been stacked against us. We have been succeeding, we have been doing. So are there issues in our community? Yes. Are there still some strides that we need to make? Yes. But that go back to Africa thing, don't even bring that to me. So.
All right. Pastor Michael Brooks, I see you're unmuted.
Wow. Well, Brandon hit my number one. That is the biggest one, I'll tell you. But number two for me is that we are not absent fathers. We love our children. We are providers. We are nurturers. And it's amazing how society still tries to portray us as not wanting to work, as not being a father there. Well, yeah, they're incarcerated and made a bad choice or was framed. They're not there. But there is a lot of us that are good fathers. And we are nurturers too. We provide. We work hard for our children.
Thank you. All righty. All right, I see Alan Brooks.
Yes, I have to agree with what the brothers have said on all accounts. But one of the things that really bother me is that someone that has that the people have been duped into believing that just because there's the color of my skin, that they're somehow better than me. And then when they find out that they're not, the anger that they have and the disdain that they have because they feel less than, because that was the plan. The plan was to make the poorest white person or whatever colored person that wasn't black, they were still better than me. And when they find out that they're not, it's just pure hate and disrespect for anything that you've done. Because I know, and Bishop, I'm sure you've shared this, no matter what you accomplish, it seems like, oh, well, that must have been luck. He can't do that again. And it's like you constantly have to reprove yourself, not only in your profession, but as a father, as a man of integrity. And this is with women even. I can't tell you how many women would, approach me and I say, well, I'm married. Oh, I won't tell if you don't. I'm like, well, what is that? And then you if you believe something like that of your men, you wonder why you have that mindset of saying all men are dogs. Well, that's what you attract because of who you are. And so these people that have these biased opinions also that think, well, I'm better than him. Look, he's black. And then when they see that they're not, for whatever reason, my intelligence, my vocabulary, what I possess, whatever it is, now they just go directly to hate and disdain, and they want to use the N word or whatever else that they think that's going to make them feel better, but really it's not.
Wow. Minister Thomas, you got something to round that out?
I do, and mine is kind of short and quick. I believe that one of the misconceptions that we believe, and that some would believe as it relates to black men, is that all of us have some type of criminal or threatened past. And because of that, I believe that because of the way that, I'm trying to use my words wisely because I can't take this back. I think the way that we have been approached for quite some time from other cultures is that because they believe that we have a checkered past, or because they believe that we are a threat, like Brandon said, we don't have the ability to communicate what we believe or what we stand for, which makes us seem to be subservient, because oftentimes with that idea, it causes us to feel as if we cannot communicate the best way that we should when we are dealing with some type of relational or biased conflict. So I think one of the greatest misconceptions that I believe that is thought of as it relates to to black men is one, like Bishop, you already stated, is that black men are uneducated, black men are unlearned, and black men do not have the ability to communicate without their fists, but they are able to communicate through voting. We're able to communicate through passing policy. We're able to communicate through, if it's walking and protesting on the street, and we're able to communicate by sitting at the table so that policies and procedures are done so that black African Americans can get the equality and the justice that we need and we should have gotten for quite some time. 400 years is passed over. We are long overdue for the justice that we as black men and as a black community deserve. So we are not uneducated. We are not subservient, and our meekness is not weakness. Trust me, it's definitely not.
Wow. That I look at. I see all these fists going up. Amen. So listen. I think that if I were answering that question, I would just bundle everything that all of you said. But the two biggest things that resonate with me, number one, is that I am not a threat unless you try to, unless you are intending that I submit myself in a way that implies less than. I remember watching A Different World. Remember that spinoff from The Cosby Show back in the 80s, 90s? And one of the characters said that the biggest threat in America is an educated black man. And I have experienced that myself. You don't have to be someone that is, got the big head and walking around like, oh, look at me with my degrees. I have found that there are people who, watch this, have literally stopped talking to me once they realized that I had an earned PhD. folks that when I left to go to school, I would see you every day, and we would have conversations. And as soon as I came back, and it was no longer Mr. Vaughn, but it was Dr. Vaughn, having spoken to me from that day to this, and I got my PhD 22 years ago. Listen, people are threatened because of the fact that it is understood that you cannot be held down legitimately. Oh, you may put your knee on my neck by breaking the law, but if we really had an even playing field, if we really had a path that was equitable, not just equal, then you might be able to see something that you can handle. And then the second thing is what somebody else said. I need the world to understand that my history does not begin in 1865. Do you understand what I'm saying? So 1865, by the grace of God, June 19th, the last group of slaves in America understood. They got the message, we are free. Hear me. Before our ancestors were kidnapped, were abusively stripped from their homeland, they had centuries of accomplishment. And I need for the world to understand that the history of Black people did not begin in America. And we, especially as Black people, need to understand that we come from a proud legacy. The first time I went to Africa was in 2003. It was during the war, the civil war in Liberia. When I witnessed what my brothers and sisters in Africa were living with in that country, and then I realized once I had the opportunity to experience how it is that many of them left Africa against their will and made it to the United States, endured slavery, and continue to endure the issues that threatened their civil rights, it made me weep. Why? Because of the fact for you to survive what you had to go through leaving Africa to come to this country, different culture, different language, different experience, and you still survived. And you not only survived, but you were able to drive and thrive. That's what is in us as Black men. And it's been pushed down for so long that sometimes we forget who we are. And I want the world to know that the beautiful Blackness that you see in front of you tonight, it is the result of the special grace of God that has been at work long before 1619, when Blacks first arrived on these shores in shackles. Hallelujah. What'd you say?
About to make me.
All righty. I'm gonna get off my soapbox. So I've been looking to see if there were questions. All we're getting is a lot of hallelujahs from the people on their comments. They're actually agreeing with what's being said. Any questions before we hand it back to Apostle for a wrap up? Any questions? I'm looking. I'm seeing all these awesome sisters who are on tonight. It looks like it's all sisters. So y'all clearly wanted to hear from these brothers. So what you got? Ask us anything. If we don't want to tell you, we'll let you know. Come on, you got a group of an array here. What's on your mind, ladies? What's on your mind? So while they're thinking, I want to tell you about the dilemma that I think a lot of us are facing in the wake of the George Floyd tragedy, the question has been asked, why did it strike such a nerve? Why did it strike such a chord in this country? Because we know that there have been 400 years of abuse of Black people in America. Let's just be honest. So we sometimes go all the way back to like Trayvon Martin. That seems to be where our minds go. But you need to understand, if you think about it, it was happening in the 60s, the 1960s. It was happening in the 1850s. You go on back to the 1600s. Come on. So why did George Floyd, why did that hit such a nerve? And I think that it's because we had been on lockdown, so more people were paying attention to what's going on. I think that for me, it's like this. You mean to tell me that by the grace of God, I can survive COVID-19? By the grace of God, I can make it through this historic economic downturn, but still, just because of my race and gender, I could be subject to being gunned down in the street by somebody with a badge. I think that really hit home. That what does it mean to be a survivor in America if I am relegated to just being, as somebody else said, second class, this Black man? That's all you see. You don't know that I'm a father, a husband, I'm an accomplished scientist, I'm a servant leader, a community leader. Listen, I think that folks really got to a place where they were like, enough is enough. We got questions coming in. All righty, get ready. So let's just see what you all actually can respond to this. Because the question is, why do you think other Black men struggle with who they are? This is great because the book that I mentioned about the 10 issues of Christian men, identity is one of the top on the list. Who am I? Where do I fit in? And so why do you think Black men struggle with identity? I see a lot of folks unmuted. Who wants to start?
I can start.
Okay, go ahead.
One thing I think is exposure, what they're being fed to. When you look at it, we watch the news. Think about it. There's a man in decline. You will know if it's Black. They say a Black. They say a man robbed the store. Who did that man? Who did that man? He's white. So it's just certain things that media does. I'm sensitive to. I catch it. I don't know how many other people catch it, but if you're exposed to that, and you see that a lot, if you're in an environment or at home where you're told you're nothing, you're not going to amount to nothing, then you have an identity. If you're around a bunch of guys that always do bad things and you pick up those same traits, again, it's an identity issue and you're grabbing hold of the wrong thing. I think environment.
Thank you. You got
Bishop?
something? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you hit on a valid point of identity. There's things that, I don't like, and then there's things that I really despise. One thing I heard on the radio, I was riding home from work with a coworker, and he's Caucasian, and we rode together for 20 years. He wanted to help me see some things that, from his perspective, and I definitely let him see some things from my perspective. And we were listening to Rush Limbaugh, okay? And Rush Limbaugh, he said some things I didn't have too much of an issue with, but one thing he did say that infuriated me was that, these Black kids don't need to worry about no Black history. All they need to learn math and science. And I looked at my friend and I said, we need to turn the channel, change the station. He said, what? Well, that would help them better now. I said, well, okay. So then if you don't know your history, where do you start? I said, so if you right now, everything that they have left out of the history books that we have accomplished would go to empower us. But we have to have Black history classes to get that. And I never forget that one day I was at break and my team leader walked by and he saw me reading a book that was very thick. And that probably surprised him. And he said, "Oh, what's that?" And he looked at the title and it said The Black 100. And he said, "Oh, now if I had the white 100, you'd be upset." I said, "No, if it was a white 100, it'd be the history books that you read in school."
Mhm.
And I asked him, I said, "Did you know that a Black man designed the White House?" No, no. I said, "Yes, his name was Benjamin Banneker." "Did you know that a Black man created blood plasma? Did you know that a Black man created the traffic light?" "Well, no, I didn't." I said, "I didn't either. That's why I'm reading this book, if you don't mind." And he just kind of scurried off. So when you don't know where you came from and you don't have anything to attach to that brings you pride and say, this has been done before me by my ancestors, which means I can do that and more. So when all day a Black man today has is that, "Oh, I don't have a father," and on TV everything is negative and everybody thinks bad of me. When as soon as they see me, they're clutching their purses. They're looking afraid or they're crossing the street. That's their issue. But unfortunately, it's a Black man's issue today because if he has nowhere to understand where he came from, he doesn't have a foundation. And without a foundation, you have nothing.
Amen. Thank you. Anyone else want to weigh in on that one?
Honestly, I would just add more of the same. I mean, it really comes down to the reason why a lot of men struggle with who they are is because they don't know who they are. They're believing the narrative. And, like Alan was saying, if we don't change the narrative, our generations are going to keep believing the same old tired stories about us that are nowhere near half what we are. So we need to change the narrative. And we need to, among our non-minority friends, we need to be sharing the narrative so that other people know that we're more than what you see on the news, more than what you see on, the basketball court or the football field. No disrespect to those athletes, but we can be so much more than athletes. And unfortunately, again, you have to change that narrative because a lot of young brothers grow up honestly believing, because I had this conversation with a colleague of mine the other day. A lot of young Black men honestly believe that their options are illegal things or athletics. And they think that's their only out because they haven't heard some of those things that's in the Black 100. They haven't heard that we can be in the boardroom, we can be legal professionals, we can be engineers, scientists, anything. We have to change the narrative.
Amen. Minister Thomas.
Would you mind restating that question, Bishop?
So the question is, why do you think Black men struggle with who they are?
I think the reason why Black men may struggle with their identity and who they are is because of two things. I believe it is because of a lack of exemplification and conversation. And as Black men, I think we have the ability to hide our flaws and hide those places where we may have struggled with, but then we seem to rebuke our sons when we see them exemplifying those same childlike behaviors that we behaved like when we were children as well. So with some sons and with some young men, I believe if they had examples in the household, and if they did not have an example in the household, the good thing about shaping identity is that although there may be a lack in the household as it relates to a man, there's always an influence that you can look at and point to say that this is someone that I believe that can shape my identity, and this is someone that I can be able to follow as it relates to where I'm going. I'm reminded through scripture that the Bible says that when Jesus spoke on multiple occasions, he said, I can only do what I see the Father do. And what I'm saying because I heard the Father say it, meaning he's had multiple conversations with God so that what he's doing and embodying on the earth is the same thing that he saw in heaven. So even us as men and as fathers, we have to be able to have dialogue and conversation so that the things that we are exemplifying in our jobs, in the schools, in ministry, in our marriages, and especially in our marriages, because especially in our marriages and especially in the fatherhood role, if we have conversations and we have dialogue like the ones that we are having, I believe that there are some shackles that can be loosed just through conversation and dialogue alone. So I think that those are some of the keys of resolving some of the misidentity of Black men, because some of the things that we're seeing take its place, we're seeing it because it's right before us, like the injustice and the police brutality and the systematic racism that we're seeing. Some of us would have never even seen this. Some, not all of us. Some of us may have never known what was taking place if we didn't see it on Facebook or see it on social media or see it on the news. So our ability to communicate that without these outlets, without social media, helps these Black men to know who they are and where they came from. And that happens through example and communication.
Amen. Wow. Thank you all for sharing that. And I think it's really important for that dialogue really to continue to seep into the psyche of our communities. I brought Apostle back on so that she can begin the wrap up. But I believe that what we have addressed here in just this hour is material that is necessary for conversations around our dinner tables. I was saying back in the day, which is prior to mid-March, around the water cooler, in the cafeteria, and certainly in our Bible studies, and even from our pulpits. We need to recognize that the only reason, I remember several years ago that there was a common saying that the Black man is an endangered species. I want you to understand that the only thing that makes a species endangered is if it is mistreated and not nurtured. And so I think that we really have to understand that we don't have to wear those labels. We owe it to ourselves and our communities to make sure that we are nurturing each other, that we've got each other's backs, that we are accountability partners, and we are lifting each other up so that we are counter to those misperceptions that we have talked about. And by the grace of God, together, we are going to rise. So thank you again, gentlemen. Back to you, Apostle Jeanette.
Wow. Conversation has been amazing. I'm going to mute your mic just so we don't get the feedback, Bishop. Like this whole threat and this whole power of connecting with the Father, but connecting, knowing who you are, the history piece, it really just goes along to, as an educator, I really feel like God is compelling me to challenge, and not just in a negative way, but to push at our education system, because I've taught first grade, taught fourth grade, taught fifth grade, was a director of the pre-K, principal for K through 5, and in none of the history books there's nothing about what we have learned in for some of us in this short 120 days. We understand as well that Black history is taught sometimes at college, in some colleges, but it's an elective. So it's not even, it doesn't even go towards your degree unless you're studying Black culture or Black history. And so when you look at the mandatory elective for history, when they talk about American history, we are just not even in there unless it's Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, I've been listening to the speech of Frederick Douglass. I don't know if any of you've had the opportunity to listen to his some of his great grandchildren that are reading that, and I believe he did that speech in Rochester, New York. But to hear that, to watch Hamilton this weekend, it's like, why is this not in our history books? Because as an African American teacher and principal in a predominantly white school, okay, where I was a principal, I was the only Black staff, and I may have had 2 African American students in the student body of almost 700 students, right? When they don't have anyone to look to, when I was in Geneva and I was director, I remember some of the Black children saying, she's the principal, she's the director. And you can see like the pride. To date, I've had some phenomenal students in my 4th grade, 5th grade, and 1st grade classrooms. And guess what? I love them, whether they're Black, whether they're white. And it's amazing how many of my white students, blonde and blue-eyed, who I love, are now going to be teachers. Why? Because they tell me, Mrs. Vaughn, I'm going to be a teacher because of you. And when our kids don't see anybody that look like them, it's hard, it's challenging, and it goes to say what you all were speaking about is the man's identity. And so I want to encourage all of you sister girls out there, you guys that are going to see this, to get the book that Bishop is talking about. You have to read. If you have to read where read to you, because if you open a book, you may fall asleep, like sometimes I do. Get it where it reads to you. You have to educate yourself. And that's what you men did tonight for a lot of women. And I know some men are feeling under pressure. They don't have an example. They're not being held accountable. But there is a heap of you that are doing it. And that's what we need to focus on. There is many men that I could have invited that are stepping up to the plate, being a good husband, being a good father, being a good citizen. And that's what we want America to see, not cops. And I'm going to end on that note, and I'll share that so people understand what I mean by that. One of the things that happened during this George Floyd time is I had an opportunity to protest in our city, which we're probably in our area, in the Stu Corning area, maybe 1%. I don't have the exact number, but it may be only 1% Black. Okay. And we've had people say, why did Black lives come here? They need to go back where they came from. And we're like, look, hello, we live here. But I asked our chief of police of Corning, New York, why do you think white people are afraid of Black people? And with a little tinge of excitement, he said, have you watched Cops? He didn't hesitate. He knew the source of where the issue. And I said, oh no, I don't watch that show. Because number one, when you see that show, you don't see why people have gone to drugs and prostitution. We don't have the planes to bring the drugs in here. Okay, I'm gonna leave that alone. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at Johnson, our president, who brought in all of this welfare and divided our families, where you have more of our men incarcerated than ever was in slavery. And if you look at the amendment where it says we're free except if you break the law, that was their loophole. where you have more men that are incarcerated with harder sentences regarding marijuana, and now marijuana is legal, you have to look. And so when I was listening to this chief of police, who basically the reason why he knew was his daughter went to school and came back and shared with him and said, Dad, watching that show with you made me afraid of Black men. And I was like, wow, that's a piece of information. But the other key was he didn't stop watching it. He was watching it with his son. So there are shows out there that they look at, and that is what they want to define us. And then, as Bishop said, when they find out that you're educated, they're more threatened because they want you to need them. They want to be superior. I said I was going to end, and I want to just share this last story that a professor shared with us as actually our provost of Pepperdine University. He said that clearly there is some injustice. He has a colleague that is an African-American, phenomenal professor. And he said that the African-American professor was sharing with him. He said, you know what? He said, I realized that I did something wrong. He said, I forgot. He brought a brand new car and he forgot to go to Pepperdine University bookstore to get a detail saying that he was a professor and putting on this new car. You have to understand, the campus is in Malibu, California. If you've never been to Malibu, check it out. Okay, this college is on the water. It's beautiful. Okay. And so he leaves there after teaching class late at night one evening, and he was stopped by a police officer. The police officer goes up to him, give me this, give me that. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry, officer. He's like, what are you doing out here? He said, I'm a professor. And he was like, where? He said, Pepperdine. He was like, well, what do you teach? He said, English. He said, the police officer laughed in his face. Like, yeah, right. And gave him a ticket. The provost said that same week he was leaving work and he was in a truck. And he said when he got pulled over, which he was speeding. Now, the African-American professor was not speeding, but he was in a new car in Malibu. He said, the provost said he was pulled over, he was speeding, and the officer came up and he thought it was a student. Realized that, and he said, immediately, without even asking him, who was he? He said, oh, I'm so sorry, sir, he said, are you? He said, oh, yeah, I'm the provost here. Oh, I'm so sorry, I stopped you. No problem. I'm going to give you some. Don't worry about no points. Just apologizing to the provost. The provost is a white man. And he shared this story with us to let us know that he was clearly aware that when he got stopped for the right reason, because he was breaking the law, that he was given a pass, where his colleague, who was an African-American, who was in a brand new car and not breaking the law, was stopped and given a ticket. A lot of people don't understand whether they have a Black male child, what we have to deal with, as Brandon said, there's things that we have to think about that they don't have to. And so I want to say thank you, my brothers, for sharing with us on the chat exactly how it is to be a Black man in America that's not going back to Africa. I love it, Pastor Rick. That's my pet peeve. So I want to thank all our audience out there. I trust that you'll join us next week. We're going to be inviting some of these men and their wives back, and a couple other guests with their wives, and we're going to talk about being a Black couple in America. All right. We want to make sure that people that we're connected to in the world know that we know how to do it God's way. God bless you all and have a good night. Kudos to Dr. Vaughn. I love you, honey. You go. And to all my brothers that's there, my son-in-law, I just adopt, Pastor Thomas, my new son, and Pastor Rick, he our son too. God bless you all. I love you all and have a good night.